Right, guys, welcome back to the Beautiful Struggle podcast with myself, Magic Mike, as I'm known on the scene by the sounds of things.
I wonder why, Jay.
It's not because of the film. There's a new one out, isn't there? Have you seen that advertised?
I think Katie says she's going to go and watch it with me. I was like, feel free.
Yeah.
They can't change, can they? They're all the same.
It's not going to be a date night one, that, is it?
Is, what's his name? Channing Tatum still doing
Yeah, he's still doing it.
No way.
He is rinsing the life out of fucking Magic Mike, isn't he? Jesus Christ.
Oh, God.
So, we've been trying to squeeze another episode in amongst this guy travelling all over the world on PJs and shit.
Sorry, guys. Sorry.
It's an hard life at the top, isn't it?
I'm going away tomorrow, and then I'm back on the 24th.
Yeah.
And I go to the Arnold Classic on like the 1st or 2nd of March.
So we've got about a week to try and squeeze another one in.
Yeah.
We have got a couple of guests in the DMs ready to go, but it's whether we can squeeze it in amongst your busy fucking schedule, mate.
We'll sort it out.
We will try our best. So we've got another guest in studio. We've also had a new little layout change, which we'd like to say we did it days ago, ready for today, but we've just been spending about an hour doing it. But we've got another guest due to the success of the last episode with Oscar. Thank you to everyone that tuned into that one. The guest today, well, I'm going to start off by saying, like, this guy's... He's pulling the wool over everyone's eyes a little bit because he's making all these claims on social media. You know, he's claiming natty this, natty that. He's lifting these fucking weights on social media, which we know they're fake plates. We've seen it done before. I know. It's old news, and it gets to the point where the guy doesn't even go by his real name. So if he can't tell you his real name, what else isn't he telling us? To be fair. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Daylight robbery.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, introducing Khifie West in the building.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, do you like the intro?
I love the intro. Yep, it's something that I'm just gonna have to roll with it now.
That's it, man.
Hoping that not many people tune into this, so I can keep my claim to, you know,
natty fame.
Yeah, pretty much. Hopefully I can. I just told the world of Instagram last night that I'm going to stay natural now, so
I know.
Hopefully people will still buy into that, and this won't be out too long after, so maybe people will forget about it and I should be okay. So.
Still some more juice to squeeze from the lemon. You got to get it as much as we can.
Tell the listeners what you said when he was walking up the path.
I said, Jay.
Oh no.
It looks like he's on gear. I say he's got a walk like he's on gear. And I say he's got a head like he's on gear as well. It must be the buzz cut.
Welcome to the podcast, bro.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I mean, there's always a thing that some people are born with like a larger head, so it's not always the gear.
I've got a massive
makes it bigger.
Fuck all.
Yeah, but you're on gear.
No, I'm not.
Oh, sorry, Jay, you're natural as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Jay's a natural Magic Mike.
I thought that. I knew I should have put my hat on.
Yeah. No, to be honest with you, like the off-season face for natties or people that are on steroids is it's a blown out look. Everything blows out, doesn't it? You can't expect the head to stay like you're in prep, which is my biggest bugbear because I love the old, you know, chiseled
jawline. The jawline. That's like 2 or 3 weeks out, everything comes in so tight, and then the first off plan that I have post show, that's it.
Head like a loaf of bread.
Yeah. And then I just need to accept it throughout off season because I know that it's not coming back.
As soon as the debug goes in as well.
Not that I would know much about that.
Jesus.
Wow.
I can't believe you started with that, Jay. I thought you were at least going to ease him in a little bit.
Everyone's asking, man. Everyone's asking. Everyone's wondering.
To be fair, we're about an hour late for the podcast, so we're only going to make about 20 minutes. So put it in.
Just straight in.
But, you know, you're obviously used to this sort of... When did you start getting asked this sort of questions? Like, how old are you now? And when you start getting asked?
So I'm 24 now.
Yeah.
I started getting asked when I was maybe around 18, 19, a lot more, because that was when I was kind of getting more serious about training and I was learning a little bit more. When I started off training, I was literally just going in and kind of training full body, like every day, because I never knew anything else.
Yeah.
So I was just going in. Don't get me wrong, I was still, like, I was pulling like 200 kilograms off the floor when I was 16. So at that point, I kind of knew that I maybe had something from the strength like side of things.
Yeah.
But I would more so get like the old men in the gym kind of giving me that bit of shit for like, oh, he'll just be taking this, that, the next thing.
Yeah.
But where I'm from, I was very isolated. So from the get-go, I just pulled myself back and just stayed in my own lane, yes, but I never entertained anybody in the gym. I just kind of, that was really my time. Even if I only went in for maybe like 45 minutes, that was my time. But once I started kind of becoming on the social media scene, and then I competed for the first time, that was really when things started to more so come into play. Not really necessarily from the training side of things, but really just from like my physique, because I was never huge, but I was always dense. But it was only because I was forever going into the gym. Like, I was a fat kid before I lost weight and got into the gym, and then because I kept religiously just trying to lift heavy and heavy and heavy, that I think allowed me to build a little bit of extra density earlier. And because I was obviously a fat kid at heart, like, I never had an issue eating. So I was still at school, I was eating from burger vans every day. I was probably sinking easy 3,000 to 4,000 calories, like when I was like 16,
without
17,
you thinking about it.
Without thinking about it. Like what we were saying in terms of training, it got to the point almost immediately, because I was fat and then I started losing weight, I kind of get into that motion of seeing the results. So I then wasn't even thinking about training. I was just going and training because I enjoyed it, and I started seeing things change. And on top of that, outside, the eating was never an issue.
Isn't it refreshing to hear someone actually training because they enjoy training and not because they've got to fucking do it for the gram? Or you're like part of the new school, innit? You're part of the new school.
My generation right now
but you stand out in your generation because of the way you do things, and we've had this conversation when we filmed and stuff. And it's refreshing to you, man, because so many people out there are doing it for the gram, or they want to do a show, so they start training. We've talked about this before on the podcast, haven't we?
I've got a question for you. Have you got a mesocycle for your training?
As in, have I got like different patterns throughout my training? My training never changes.
Well, I just wanted to say mesocycle because it's a shit word.
We can tag it and hopefully get the algorithm kicking off.
Wait till I just Google that a second.
No, I mean, you obviously train every day, right? Is that correct? Is that something you've done from when you were 16?
Yep.
So in 8 years, how many days off have you had training?
I
don't expect you to know, but roughly.
Maybe between 6 and 10.
6 and 10 days off.
And it's probably been when I was in Dubai, I had to take 4 days off because I got there and got food poisoning.
You were ill, weren't you? Yeah.
That's 4 of the 6 or 10 days.
Yeah. And then the other ones would have been on peak week. Whenever I'm on peak week, I've always got to stop training like a couple of days before.
Yeah.
So they kind of would add up.
Let's say, for argument's sake, 2 weeks in
2 weeks
in
8
years.
8 years.
That's not bad. But question is going to be then, obviously, if are you training heavy all of those days? What is your setup?
I train by feel, so I don't logbook, never logbooked in my life. I don't take anything to do with that side of things. I do train by how I feel, so what that means is, a lot of people do think that, right, this just means that I'll go in and I'll have super light days, I'll have super heavy days, but in a way it just means that, right, I'll go in, my split's the same, and I've always got like the specific days that I know what I'm going to train, but it just means that if I go in 1 week and I'm feeling really good and I'm feeling the strongest that I've been on a good run, or for example, if I've been on a good run with something, I will keep them consistent heavy days up. But it just means that I could go in and deadlift 7 plates off the floor this week, but next week I might only be doing 6 plates. But because my body's so immune to pulling upwards of 6.5 to 7 plates, 6 plates to the normal person is still going to be really demanding, but that's not going to be overly demanding for like my central nerve system, because it's used to being completely bust by, for example, pulling 7 for reps. So it's just like, it will be heavier days and relatively lighter days. But I will always go by feel. I'll do what exercises I want to do on them specific days. I know what exercises I can feel really good in, and I know which ones more so give me the most bang for my buck. And from a more so old school approach or training, when I was brought up, there was only really one guy in my gym that I was able to kind of learn off of and bounce off of. And it was always the high intensity but high volume approach. So it was never like, if I was in training with him, we would probably take the first couple of presses up relatively heavy to the point where I could maybe only do 4 or 5 reps, but then immediately it would be drop sets. It would be straight into like triple drops and then tempo intensifiers and things. So I learned a lot from that, which is why like once I get more or less my bigger movements in a session out the way, which you would classify as maybe the more so power building side of things, of lower reps and extremely heavier weights, I'll then move on to the bodybuilding side where I'll still be lifting relatively heavy, but nowhere near compared to what the bigger, more so demanding movements are getting. So essentially, that is my kind of time within the training that I'm not going to get completely bust. Like, I'm not logging a side raise thinking, God, I've got to beat this next week. Like, if that was the case, I would be trying to side lateral raise like a 40 kilogram dumbbell just because I was trying to progress it. I'll never take a side lateral raise over 12 and a half, 15 kilograms max. But there'll be continuous sets of between maybe 12 to 20 reps every single time. So essentially the way that I look at it is my body's not going to get fried by that sort of stuff. It's just getting completely mashed up by deadlifts, barbell
basic
squats.
Shit. Basic shit, isn't it?
So we talk about it all the time. The basics work. And I think today's school is going away from what is good and perhaps more towards what looks good. What looks more intelligent and, you know,
I was
grammage.
On the back of your analogy the other week about killing someone, you know. I come up with my own analogy. So, say for instance, your bank account, you've got so many bills coming out. You will focus on obviously the big income to cover your bills, right? Which is the big moves in the gym, the basics, get those done. And then if you're trying to save some money and you want to start like cutting back on the little payments coming out, like the PayPal app payments and stuff, £3 here, £4 there, the little things, then you start scraping away at those once the big bills have been taken care of. And it's kind of the same with training. You know, take care of the big movements, all the little shit that we see every day in the gyms these days.
Well, it is. You got to do the big thing. Like, it's meat and the veg, innit?
Meat and the veg.
You get the meat first, then you add the veg and all the little bits on the side. What you're saying is there's perhaps, is it at least one like big heavy movement per day in your split?
I'd say on things like a back day where I'll do deadlifts will be the only big movement. Then I'll do like a chest supported row, and essentially everything else will be chest supported. So on, say for example, a pressing day, so I might do like 2 or 3 presses, and then it'll just be like 1 fly or 2 flies max, and that's me done. So it'll still be, once I get to the, like, say once I get deadlifts out of the way, then I'm looking at doing 2 to 4 sets of just pyramid work. I'm not doing top and back offs for everything. I would do top and back offs for your compounds and pressing, just because it's probably going to be a little bit harder for me to keep up a top set over the course of maybe 2 or 3 sets. But once I get to the isolation work or the smaller compound work that's not going to kill me, I'm just doing pyramid sets up the way, and then the last and final set will be probably the heaviest, and then that'll be maybe an 8 to 12 failure marker, and that's me.
Question is going to be though, obviously, like you see a lot of people out there on Instagram, social media, even professional bodybuilders, people on, you know, helpful aids, PEDs and whatever else. They all factor in rest as like very high up on their priority list of things to keep going at that intensity, keep getting stronger, keep progressing, etc. So the question you've obviously had a lot is, how the hell can you train every day naturally and still get stronger? Like, how can you recover?
I think the first thing that does come to my mind is your mindset.
Big bowls of cereal.
Pretty much. Well, we'll get that.
Big bowls of cereal.
That's like the third thing coming up. The first thing that comes to my head is your mindset towards recovery and training. So a lot of people actually don't think they can recover. So immediately, if you set a limitation on your recovery, you're not going to recover. It's as simple as that. It's like the second you set a limitation on what can be done and what can't be done from a natural athlete's perspective, like I'm not one to brainwash everybody and just tell them that I'm natural, because I don't care about it, and I don't care about assisted bodybuilding. The last person to have anything against it. But I'm also, my main drive is to be able to showcase to people that if you do set a limitation or disbelief on anything at all, and that could be recovery, that could literally be anything to do with, right, I've barbell squatted on Monday, so there's no chance that I'm going to be able to like rack pull, block pull, deadlift or something like that on Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah.
Well, of course you're not going to be able to do it if you're immediately thinking that you're going to be fried by the time Wednesday and Thursday comes.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest thing. But from a recovery capability perspective, sleep is everything for me. Like, I'm sleeping upwards of like 10, 11 hours a night.
Yeah.
Like, I'm getting, and as much as it's easily enough to be able to say that, right, that's not going to be all quality sleep. Of course it's not all going to be quality sleep, but it's still my rest time where I'm doing literally next to nothing else.
Yeah.
Coaching is my main source of my work. Again, that's not taxing. So I'm just eating around the clock, and then I'll go to bed, and then that's me. I wake up, I'll get up, I'll do my work, I'll then train, and then I'm coming home, eating, going to bed.
Yeah.
It's just that continuous cycle. So I'm never doing anything that is overly taxing apart from training.
Yeah.
So that's my main part of the day that's going to be the more so given out job of putting the kind of graft in that's going to obviously require me to take extra rest.
Can I ask something on the back of that? Today, obviously, you've driven from Durham to come down to the podcast, and we're training later and stuff. Do you find when you do those days where you've travelled, because obviously I know you travel a lot as well around different gyms, do you find the travel impacts your training? Do you ever see that?
I've seen that quite a few times if I've travelled to try and deadlift. Because I like to travel about and deadlift in different gyms. If I know they've got obviously good equipment that I'm going to be able to use on something like a deadlift. I'm quite picky when it comes to that because of things like bars and plates and depending on what the kind of, say like the temperatures and things like that of gyms are like. So I like to make sure that I'm always fresh for that. I've noticed a couple of times whenever I've travelled maybe 2-3 hours and I've jumped in too early to the session. So for example today, like I'm essentially getting rest before the training session, so I'll be much better than usually. I would just get off the road, take my pre, and then train. That's when I would notice a bigger effect. But I've kind of more so got my baseline set off, right, Ultraflex Durham's my kind of, that's my base, that's my ground. So I'm there the majority of the time, and I try now that if I do travel, I can at least get a few days. So then my body can kind of adapt to that little bit extra rest instead of just doing 4 hours here, train, and then 4 hours back.
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
I agree with what you're saying completely as well with the limited mindset thing, because I was saying this on a video the other week. I was like, you can do a lot more than you think you can do in a lot of people's cases. And they're limiting their mind to believing that they can only do 2 days on, 1 day off. I mean, last year through all the prep, I did 6 days a week. And that Sunday really was kind of just like a mental release more than perhaps needing to have a break. But yeah, I think if you can regulate your own training and just be kind of instinctive with what your body feels like it's up to that day, I don't see an issue with training every day. I think you can kind of work around that with the sleep, the food, etc. And again, maybe it is people who are on gear and people who are not, their limited mindset and their limited beliefs because of that say, well, you've got to be on gear because I can't recover like this and I'm on this much. Well, yeah, but you can't recover. One of the main things because of your limited mindset. Different tangent a little bit, but kind of linked. I was in the hairdressers yesterday and I couldn't believe the conversation. So I was going on about progression to my hairdresser, and should we say hairdresser or barber? What's the right term? Is
barber,
a hairdresser like a ladies?
Depends if you went to a salon or not.
I know.
no, it's like a
Did you have your nails done like you normally do? Do you have the
No,
glossy
I tell you
nails?
what,
Or
I
not?
can't have my nails done again because I went to Chinese a few times and they've ruined them. They're like all chipping. They like put acrylic on them so they're all weak.
What a modern day man.
I know, I was going to say that.
For another day. Well, I went because I got some severe abuse on YouTube about my toenails because I got 2 big toenails that have they're a bit funky because of playing football and being stamped on so much.
I remember when you stepped on the scales one year when we filmed a YouTube video. It must have been about 2 or 3 years ago, and you got slated in the comments on it. So feet are bad, man.
Not as bad as Cuba's. I mean, he's just barefoot leg pressing and get shit. He's got some loyal fans. But yeah, I was shopping with Katie, and I think it was Sheffield or Leeds, and there's a lady in the shop. I don't know how we got onto the subject of toes, but this lady in the shop said, "Oh, you can have fake toenails, Like I say, don't know how we got into this conversation, but I was like, what? Show me. So she got a sock off, She worked in the shop. She got a sock off. I mean, ladies' feet, they're not too bad as like the men's, are they, anyway? So it's not as bad as me whipping my sock off in the shop. Anyway, she's got this fake toenail. I'm like, that was pretty good, you know. So I went to Chinese to get some fake toenails.
Oh my God.
But they look sick. They look good. They look a lot better than they fucking did.
Are they on?
Have you got fake toenails? I fired them off because I'm going to Dubai.
Ah, okay.
After this debacle. So while I was there, I did my nails as well. But anyway, the acrylic they put on, it just weakens your nails. So they're fucking all chipped, and every time you put your hand in your pocket, you catch your nail on your like pocket, and it rips it down even more.
Fuck that.
It's not good. So don't go to the Chinese. But I was talking about his barber. We're calling him a barber.
Barbers, yeah.
The barber next to us is one of these weed smoking, deep philosophical guys. I know that from when I've been in there before. But I was talking to my barber, Rob, about progression in life and identity. Because when I said I was going to stop competing, I was like, I kind of feel like I lost my identity. So he was going, your identity is only perception. That was like stage 1. And I was like, well, yeah, it's kind of, I get that. And he says, anyway, why are you trying to progress? He says, we're all going to die. I was like,
Fucking
yeah,
hell.
I know. He says, but so if you know we're going to die and we're going to decline through life, what's the point in trying to be progressive? Because it's natural for us to decline. That was his mindset. Like the opposite to our mindset.
Yeah.
We're about progress and going after it.
He's declining from straight out of the womb.
I was just saying I said to him, like, what's the point in living if
Yeah.
you like that? And I says, why are you working? Like, why do you need money to buy certain things, blah, blah, blah? And he's like, work's a sacrifice. Work's a sacrifice to a better tomorrow. I was like, why do you want a better tomorrow if... oh, God, that's the base of the conversation.
Circle.
Yeah. And then I got... the conversation ended because he says, I'm not going to speak to anyone who's laughing at me. I was laughing in disbelief at this guy's kind of views on
did
life.
He felt a bit hurt by it? Or?
Yeah, he was hurt because I was laughing. And he says, do you know what? I'm probably wrong, but I don't think I am. That was his saying. He said it a few times. I'm probably wrong, but I don't think I am. Well, get this. I'm sure you're probably right in 5% of the population's eyes, maybe 10. So does that mean that the 95% of the people are wrong?
No.
Generally not.
Don't think so, bruv.
Anyway, that was a tangent off
limited
mindset.
That's like that difference between living and existing.
Yeah.
Just existing for whatever's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then living being the difference of being able to actually really do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Because whatever you want to do, I would always say you are capable of. You just need to be willing to you just need to be willing to put up with grey areas that's going to come up.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people aren't willing to do that. And that's, I feel, something that's also wrong with today's industry. Because people look at me straight away and see the now. They see me pulling 7 plates off the floor, squatting 6 plates for reps, and they see that and they think, like, immediately that's, like, the reason behind that is because he's genetically gifted or he's taken this. But they don't see all of the grey areas that's came up in the past 8-9 years for me to get to this now. That's the hard part. And I think because obviously within this generation now and a lot of younger people coming up and also being brainwashed by social media, it's really hard for them to be able to go through that kind of process of just wanting to be willing to get stuck in. They don't want to be willing to get stuck in. They want to just have that. They want to have it as soon as possible. They want to have it now.
Yeah.
And it's one of them unfortunate things because a lot of people are sacrificing their maximum potential because of that.
Yeah.
So it's also a case of a lot of people like to utilize the word genetics very quickly.
Yeah.
But realistically speaking, you're never going to understand your genetic potential until you've been doing something very consistently for years.
Yeah.
Like only recently I've been able to look at myself and be able to kind of judge myself on my genetics and where I could potentially go and what I could potentially do.
Yeah.
But people are really using that card very quickly, which is something else that again is, like you can only do that because you're genetically gifted.
Yeah.
No, I can do this because I've isolated myself for 8 years and not done a single thing other than this.
And work towards this.
Like that's like a lot of people can. It's easy enough to say that that's unhealthy and it's not the normal thing to do, because it's not the normal thing to do. But that's fine. Not doing the normal thing, or not doing what's popular right now, or not doing what the average 24-year-old would do, is fine. It's just, it's different. It's what I enjoy. It's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm in the position right now. So
off the back of that, because obviously with this podcast we jumped straight into the natty chat and the bodybuilding stuff.
Yeah, we did. Skipped a lot.
Let's go back 8 years then. Or let's go back to young Khif, or Chris, before Khif was Khif. You grew up in, like...
Is it Khif or Khifie? Because
whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Khifie West.
I didn't want to pronounce it wrong for the whole day, that's all.
Mr. West. We call him Mr. West.
Mr. West.
Mr. West. Yeah, so you grew up Scotland, obviously. Like the back end of no man's land, is it?
Pretty much.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So give us a little insight into, because obviously some guys are going to be listening to this, may not know who you are, and we've just concentrated with obviously what you where you are today. So going back, kind of show us the early days growing up.
When I grew up, I was obsessed with pro wrestling.
Yeah.
WWE.
Yeah.
That was all I really was into. And it was the same again. It was a more so all or nothing kind of approach. I was only ever interested in the pro wrestling, never interested in anything else, never got on well at school, never. It was just not an interest, and that was the reason behind it.
Yeah.
And I was going into my classes and things, and like if I get the chance at a computer, like the wrestling was going straight on, and you always go back and forth with the teachers and that, but I think it got to the point where that was my thing. That was what I wanted to become. I wanted to become a pro wrestler, and because I was so far away from everything, like when I even went to a training school to eventually try and become a pro wrestler, I was having to travel like 3 hours just to go and train for a couple of hours to learn, train back. So it was that consistent. Like it was hard that way because I was always faced against negativity. And that was why I feel even when I got into training, I isolated myself because I was just surrounded by nothing but negative vibes. And I don't work well around negativity. And if I even sense any form of negativity, I've got to take myself away from like that situation. So because of that, I always wanted to become a pro wrestler. So I thought, I'm going to have to get into the gym. I'm going to have to lose a bit of weight. I'm going to have to become fitter. So it was never anything to do with bodybuilding. It was just pro wrestling. Yeah. I had to wait until I was 16 to get into the gym because it was a local leisure centre that I only had access to, and I had to wait until I was 16 to get my induction, and also had to wait until I was 16 or 17 to get into the wrestling school. Eventually got accepted for the wrestling school, started doing a lot of travelling just to learn how to become a wrestler and learn all the way through that. So that was the dream coming true. Mm-hmm. Then had to wait maybe around 2 to 3 years after actually just learning to then start getting bookings for shows and promoters obviously starting to notice me. And then as that kind of started coming through, maybe around 3 years into training, I kind of started developing a little bit more muscle, and I was getting into it a little bit more because I would see the odd thing to do with bodybuilding. I would see the odd bodybuilder on social media, and I was always blown away by mass monsters. That was my, like, I was never classic, never men's physique or anything like that. It was just the crazy freaks, and I was like blown away by them. And because obviously I was never surrounded by bodybuilders, well, literally nobody into bodybuilding, it was a case of using YouTube and that to learn. And that's also something like with me, like I can't read and learn from that. Yeah. So like I would read and you could ask me 5 minutes later about it and I wouldn't be able to tell you. But if I can sit and watch something, I'll take everything.
You take it in, like a sponge.
So got into the wrestling, and it was like a phenomenal journey. Like I ended up wrestling professionally for like 4 or 5 years, and it was like really cool. Absolutely loved it. But in that time I started developing a bigger passion for bodybuilding. Yeah. And then I got to the point where I became eligible to compete in the teen category for another year. So I thought, I'm going to give this a shot. And when I done my first competition, I was just kind of doing it myself. I was like, just literally pure bro science, chicken, rice and broccoli, that's it. Like, just, this is what you need to do. That's me, a fully fledged bodybuilder now. And I actually had like such a successful first season. It was so weird. I look back at it and think like I was so out of shape. I don't know how my season went like that.
Yeah.
But I think it was just because of obviously the muscularity and the density that I had at such a young age. It carried me through.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, teens and juniors, now they are very much coming up, but teens and juniors don't really have that development of muscularity unless they've been doing it since they were like 12.
Yeah.
So once I obviously started getting into bodybuilding, then that kind of took off a lot, and I tried to really do both of them at the same time. So I tried to travel on a weekend to wrestle on a show, and then potentially the next weekend I might have had a bodybuilding show. It was when they started to clash, and I started getting better at bodybuilding. In terms of, when I say that, I started being able to diet harder. I started to be able to get leaner, and that was when I started noticing that I had to maybe think about choosing one or the other, because there was one of the nights that in my hometown in the leisure centre they actually had a wrestling show come, and obviously I got booked for it because I was this homeboy that obviously was a pro wrestler. Everybody came to it, and that was so cool. But I also had a bodybuilding show the next day.
Oh, man.
So it was actually in the first year that I competed, and obviously I progressed and got leaner throughout the season. But we had the show, and then literally I had to leave to travel. It was the NABA British Finals in Southport, I believe.
Oh yeah, complete opposite ends.
So we had the wrestling show, and I turned up, and obviously I was going to be like the main event in that show.
Yeah.
And they told me it was going to be a no disqualification match. So what that means is basically anything goes. Weapons, chairs, kendo
Really,
sticks. I was the day out.
Wow.
I had progressed, and I'd got leaner and leaner. So I was thinking, right, one, it's going to look cool because I'm going to be in good shape for this match.
Yeah.
But two, it's not going to be so good if I'm getting rattled with kendo sticks, which is just bamboo canes, and putting through chairs and things like that.
Do they go at it as well properly?
Because we were main event, we had like 25 minutes, and we just went for it. And then it was the next day. We got to the hotel that night to stay over, done the show the next day, and on the way back I was like, oh my fucking god, I'm like so sore, like I'm broke. And then I looked back at a couple of shots that I got from the stage, and you can just see bamboo cane lines on my back.
No, fucking hell.
So, what was the drive time from there?
I think it took us like 7 hours.
Jesus.
Yeah. So, but I was 19. I was full of literally nothing.
Yeah.
I'd just wrestled in front of my hometown, so I was just full of adrenaline. So I was doing anything.
Yeah.
So we done that, and then after that, I still ran a few wrestling shows because they didn't really come too close to any sort of bodybuilding things. By that time, the season was ending.
Yeah.
But it just kind of got to the point where I achieved what I wanted to achieve in it, and got recognition that I wanted to get. And then I thought, right, now's the time, because if I didn't leave it then, I would have kept going on, but it would have sacrificed both of them, because I wouldn't have been able to take one as far as possible. So we put obviously it to the side, and then pursued the bodybuilding side of things, and it just kind of.
Do you still follow wrestling and all that?
Yeah.
Like
I think since I stopped it, I became a bigger fan. Yep.
Yeah.
Because whenever I was doing it, I became less of a fan, which is something that I did notice, which I didn't really like. But you only become less of a fan because you know what's happening.
Yeah.
So, for example, obviously, it is entertainment, and essentially it is staged. And because of that, because we knew the points of a match, whenever you would try and watch like a match on TV, you would know what's coming next. So it would just kind of take the feeling of like enjoyment from it, because you always knew what was going to happen.
Because it was fake.
Pretty much.
So that fake theme has kind of run through into bodybuilding, isn't it?
Essentially, what's happened is I've just been into all these like fake journeys, and it's started making me money, and it's got me to this point where I might as well just keep running it.
Fake it till you make it, bro.
That's what they say.
Why not?
I mean, does the job. It's so good. So
you touched on something which I think might have obviously been prior to you getting into like the wrestling and stuff, which was the negativity thing. You said you can't like stay. Obviously, no one can stay around negativity. But how did you pick up on that? Was that from like an early age, something that you went through when you were younger, or was it just kind of like something that has developed like throughout time?
It was really when I started getting into training, because of that, and because I had a few people that the gym was so small that if there was 5 people in the gym, you knew they were in the gym. So because of that, I would always get a lot of people looking down on me because of what I was doing. And it would be a case of essentially small town mentality.
Yeah.
That was the issue that I was up against. And because of that, it was just, you won't be able to do that. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. Just go and get a job. And throughout school, because obviously I was always going on about wanting to be a pro wrestler, that was not you would get overlooked by this one that wants to go to university and this one that's going to go to college. On top of that, it was just because of, like I say, the small town mentality, there was no drive. Nobody's left the town. Like, if you were there, you're staying there for life.
How'd you get out of that, though? Because I'm from a small town in the valleys as well, which is a similar type of thing. So many people get consumed and sucked in and just stay in that point. At that point, sorry.
Yep.
So how'd you get out of that? What is it that in your head which makes you different to those other 5 guys in the gym that are still probably talking shit up there now?
I isolated myself from everybody and everything. I've never drank in my life. I've never done anything like that. There was like time where there was a lot of like drugs going about. People would work for the weekend.
Yeah.
To me, I would genuinely hate the thought of me doing that. Just working for a Friday to come and then being like, right, thank God it's the weekend kind of thing. I've never been like that, and I've always wanted to become a pro wrestler, and that was like serious graft. Went through years getting paid next to nothing, like, and I mean like pennies, but I was constantly showing up. So I was spending because I was having to travel so far and getting nothing. But because that was the dream, the goal, I was willing to do anything for it. Like, I was willing to do absolutely anything. And because of that, when I started adapting that mindset towards the wrestling and my training, that then got towards the bodybuilding, because then it was like, well, I'm literally going to school, walking from school to the leisure centre to train, and then waiting to get picked up to get took home, because at that time, like I still wasn't driving or anything. And that was my day. That was me. I was satisfied at that. I would do the same the next day, same the next day, same the next day. And I had a group of friends at school, but they were my friends at school. When I left, that was it. It was just me.
Yeah.
And that, I feel, has been my biggest thing, because I've literally isolated myself so much.
Yeah.
And like I've said, like, that can be looked at as a very unhealthy thing, and you can be very unsociable and things like that. But that's just been what I've wanted to do. I've chose that.
Yeah.
So
if you're consciously isolating yourself and you know you're isolating yourself, then I think
I've found with bodybuilding, it definitely kind of forces that isolation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because like you say, you've got a diet to follow, you've got a training routine to follow.
Yep.
You know that if you go out drinking or if you don't follow your diet, it's going to jeopardize your training and your results. So the more serious you start taking it, the more you definitely stop doing the other things that normal people, I say normal people, you know, the average person does. I definitely noticed that with myself. I was like probably 23, 24 when I started taking it seriously. And prior to that, I was just your typical young, late teens, early 20s lad going out drinking and trying to pull as many women as I can, not remembering much the next day because I had that much to drink, but training alongside. And you quickly realise that, hang on a minute, I've stopped, my biceps have stopped growing. Something's going wrong. Like, you got to, just take things more seriously. And then the competition, and then you kind of gravitate from that, don't you?
Yep.
But just go back to wrestling quickly. I had a quick question because I heard on a podcast, I think it was, what's the guy's name? Joe. He's in, anyway, this guy, he's a famous actor, but he was interviewing Kurt Angle.
Right.
And Kurt Angle was saying about someone calling the match.
Yep.
So you have obviously one person that calls the match.
Yep.
the Punisher guy, is it? Is it the Punisher?
Yes.
Yeah. I can't remember his name, but
Brednall or Brethnall or something like that.
Yeah, I know the
Joe
one.
Brethnall, something like that. So the guy calls the match, but how much prep goes into the match? Like, do you know what's going to happen, or does he call the whole thing?
The more experienced you become, the less planning that gets done.
Yeah.
So when you start off and you've got, say, you turn up at a show and you've got 12 minutes. So you'll turn up and there'll be a run through.
Yeah.
And you've got 12 minutes, so you've got a 12-minute match to plan. You've got a face and a heel. Face is the good guy, heel's the bad guy.
Yeah.
Heel will pretty much take over most of the stuff because you're essentially just going to get beat up the match. And then there'll be a point of the match where you have a comeback, where the crowd gets proper into it. you start obviously. It's a game of working the crowd.
Yeah.
So you're working together, you're speaking to each other in the match, you're listening to the crowd. If they die down, you need to then take over and do something that's going to bring them back up. Because if they die down, then the show's going to shit.
Right.
Yeah.
So you need to keep them like alive.
Sure.
So essentially what that means is when you kind of see them dying down a little bit, the face, the good guy, gets a little bit of hope. Do you know what I mean? They see it and they buy into that. Then obviously he gets took down again, beat again. So it's like false hope for the crowd, but they obviously buy into that a lot. But like I said, whenever you're less experienced, you just think about it. So you're like, right, we've got to do this, and this. But the more you are able to remember a 12, 20, 25-minute match, by the time you become much more experienced, you can just say, right, we'll do this here, that here, this here, and then we'll call it when we're out there. And that's
when you actually call it though, is it when you're both sprawled out on the floor, or when you're both
when you're like very close into each other, or if you're away from each other and you need to tell the ref something, the ref can then go and tell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right,
so the ref's also very much involved, because a lot of the times refs do have spots in matches, so they can also have a big involvement in that itself.
Wicked.
So
interesting stuff.
I used to love wrestling back in the day, but it got to a point where it fell off for me. I don't know. Yeah, obviously, like The Rock and all that, but then before then, I don't know if it was before your time. Like
that was the era, the Attitude Era.
Is that when you were like?
That was like Steve Austin, The Rock. Yeah. That was peak.
Did you follow it like when like Ultimate Warrior and all those boys?
I was just after that.
Am I sounding really old saying that now? Yeah. Okay, I'll edit that bit out.
Yeah.
Ted DiBiase.
Macho Man, Randy Savage. Yeah.
The Hawk twins. What was he? Well, Animal and Hawk. What were they called?
Yeah. That was. I was way too.
Bushwhackers.
Bushwhackers. Yes.
We're just gonna keep throwing old names.
Yeah. Bash Brothers.
Jake the Snake.
Remember Doink the Clown?
Yeah.
Gold. That kind of split, didn't it? There's loads of federations kind of.
It became PG. They had to stop all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And even things like blood and that now, if somebody starts bleeding, they've got to stop the match.
Yeah.
Just because it's like, that's the way they look at it now. All your hardcore matches and things, like you remember ECW.
Yeah.
It was like that's just fighting like crazy.
Yeah.
But they had to stop that because it was just.
Mick Foley wouldn't stand a chance now, would he? He wouldn't have a career.
That's literally it. Like
with his sock.
He'll get booked for the odd thing now, being like the legend that he is. But that style of wrestling's long gone.
Wow.
But don't get me wrong, like I'm still a fan of it now, but I'm not as big as what it was.
Yeah.
It's still an entertainment sport, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
it still kills it. Like when
Yep.
it comes to Cardiff now and again.
Yep.
I don't know if it goes around the UK or whatever, but
they
sell out on that.
They done like a really big pay-per-view, like one of the first pay-per-views in the UK for like 30 years. I'm sure they done it in Cardiff last year.
I think it was Cardiff, wasn't it? Yeah. I remember it's just people going mad for it.
Yeah, sure. It was like it was crazy for like lower seated tickets was something like £4,000 or £5,000.
You know, if Gladiators doesn't happen,
maybe wrestling. Yeah.
Wrestling.
Tell you.
I've been offered for wrestling before. You know, Ed Connors.
Yes.
He obviously recruited a lot of wrestlers from bodybuilding scene. And he got me at Body Power about 2016, 17. And he wanted me to go to an audition. I was just like, do you know what? The travelling. Travelling is what made me think, can't be done. You're just on the road all the time, aren't you?
Yeah, it was constant.
So, yeah, that was something that probably could have happened if I was in a different situation, maybe single, not have any kids.
Yeah.
But circumstances prevailed. I chose bodybuilding.
Bodybuilding chose you, bro. Bodybuilding chose you.
So, what would you say your ambitions are in bodybuilding? Now that's the path that you're following.
So, this has actually changed a little bit recently.
Yeah.
My goals was Olympia. Mm-hmm. I wanted to take bodybuilding as far as I possibly could because something inside me just felt as if this was right. And I wake up every single day and live the lifestyle of a bodybuilder without thinking I'm living the lifestyle of a bodybuilder. Like, this is just what I enjoy.
This is life, yeah.
I enjoy the routine. I enjoy training over absolutely everything. And what I found very quickly was me competing never took my enjoyment away from training. And that's something I really feel as if it's the main problem with the nowadays generation of people wanting to compete, because they're training for 6 months and really enjoying training, and then right now I'm going to compete, and then they start a prep for 6 weeks. They hate training. They even hate bodybuilding. They are moody as hell because they're eating like a rabbit, and then they lose it all and then just walk away from it.
Yeah.
But because I found that training was still a massive enjoyment, and I just loved bodybuilding, I loved the competing side, not got an issue dieting, not got an issue eating in the off season, the goal was, right, I want to take this as far as possible. So after last year's season, my plan was essentially to be able to move across and take things that bit further. Now, my biggest thing on top of that was, right, I want recognition in the sport. So I want to be able to work with brands that I feel mean something to me, not just work with a brand because they've offered me a certain amount of money and that's it.
Yeah.
So I was looking at places like Gasp and things like that, and I would literally be dressed Gasp head to toe for years.
Yeah.
And that's because the meaning behind the company is everything to me, and what they are able to provide is everything to me. So on top of that, I was thinking, right, something like that's also, like a company like that's not going to look at me unless I'm a 275-pound monster walking about, not fitting through doors. Because you look at their athletes, they're all monsters, which is fair enough, because that's like that's essentially their niche. That's what they are, and that's totally cool. So that was still the plan, was again make the move, take it the whole way, and I was ready, and I was totally fine with that. Like I'm never one to just, if somebody asks me about things like steroids and that, I just never answer it, because I've not like on things like, if somebody asks me in person, I'll be open. But if somebody asks me through Instagram or anything, I don't care about that. So then it got to the Arnold's last year, and I was around the week out, and literally a couple of weeks after that, Gasp came forward, and I'd met Michael and that at the Arnold's, and before I knew it, I was in Vegas and Dallas with them for Olympia week, and I'd signed with Gasp, and then I was like, I've now signed with the company that I thought was not going to be possible until I'd made a decision. I've obviously worked with really good companies such as HR Labs, Unrivaled for my supplements. I'm covered. That's me. Like, I'm not satisfied. I'm not one to get complacent. But do I need to make that jump now? For that being maybe 25% of the purpose of making that jump, do I need to do that? I've just turned 24. My training is at a really good level, and then I asked why I was kind of being the one that got the recognition for obviously a company such as like Gasp and Better Bodies, and it was because what I was doing as a natural athlete, not necessarily as a natural competitive bodybuilder, but what I was doing as a natural athlete and what I was able to provide in terms of content and just what I was putting out. And it was the more so no setting limitations, the no compromises mentality side of things. So that really got me thinking that maybe that is my thing, that's my niche. So that's why really everything stalled then, and I still want to compete again as a natural bodybuilder, don't get me wrong. I still want to compete, whether I end up competing in untested federations, which is something that I've not done since 2017 when I competed for the first time. Who knows? But things just kind of got stalled a little bit because I want to still be able to showcase and provide value and build up what can be done in natural bodybuilding.
But you must have thought about this like no end of times for hours, I'm sure. The potential, like where would it stop? Where would the strength gain stop? If you were to jump. So that's something that you probably will never stop battling with, I guess.
That's definitely one of the bigger variables that came in that took me a lot to think about, because where I'm at now, it's like I would love to get so much stronger, like so much stronger, but I also have to take on board that, right, if I get so much stronger, fine, I'm going to want to get stronger again.
Yeah, yeah.
It never stops.
It
never stops, does it?
it doesn't
No.
stop. It doesn't stop. What happens when I pull 400 kilo off the floor? I'm going to want to pull 425.
Yeah. But that's only natural.
Yeah.
And the progression as a natural athlete, if you get to 350 or whatever you get to, you're still going to want to progress that. So then is the progression, the jump to taking PEDs. I don't know. It's a minefield for yourself. I don't know.
The good thing is that you're still young.
Yep.
24 you said you are now. You're still 24. So you've got time on your side if it ever needs to change.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because what I think, and I've had these conversations with friends that are younger as well, is that what I wanted out of life when I was 23, 24, 25 is completely different to what I want out of life when I'm 34, 35.
Yeah.
So, you know, the good thing is you got time on your side. And I think it's a wise choice, man. Because obviously you told me this just before I think we did that video where you kind of dropped the announcement of the gasp thing, and you told me obviously on the shoot, and I was like, mate, it's fucking sick. Yeah. The fact that your head is that screwed on to make that decision, that speaks volumes, bro.
Yeah. You got to look at it two ways as well. I mean, obviously gasp, like the content, the strength from a natural athlete and the dedication to bodybuilding. But content-wise, content is king these days.
Yep.
The content would only get seemingly better in most people's eyes if it was lifting more weight.
Yep.
So I don't know whether they'd make much of a distinguishment between being natural and assisted. I don't know whether that would mean much to them now. They're the kind of companies that once you're in the door, you're friends with them and you're part of the family.
Yep.
It's kind of for life unless you choose so, isn't it? And do something.
100%.
Yeah.
So on the back of that, you mentioned obviously at the start of that, it was all about getting to the Olympia.
Yep.
But was the Olympia goal to get the sponsorships, or was it just part of the bigger picture as well?
When I want to pursue something, I'm all in. Mm-hmm. So I'm willing to sacrifice it, and I need to sacrifice in my life to do what I need to do to get where I want to get. And that's been something that I really feel has been something that's set me aside of everybody else as well, because I'm willing to do that, and I'm open to tell you that I'm willing to do that, because I've tried so many different things, and then when it got to the wrestling, I had to be all in, and if I wasn't all in, I was getting a backseat, and I would not get looked at. I needed to turn up at shows to build rings and take rings down. I needed to wrestle for £10 a match, and it would cost me £150 to get there and back. I needed to do that sort of shit. I needed to really, what you could say, pay my dues to get into a position that if I wanted to be in it, I had to be willing to just suck it up and really eat the shit and just do that. And that's what I did. And throughout, when I got more into bodybuilding, I wanted to pursue that and take that the whole way. Like I've said, I'm only interested in the mass monster side of things. Like, that's what does it for me, the freaks. And I know that that's not going to be achievable unless you are willing to take it the whole way or nothing.
Yeah.
And that was the mindset that I then moved across to. I need to get up every day. I need to eat all my food. I need to train the way I need to train. Like, nothing can take a back seat. Like, when I'm in prep, I'm routine to the point of my routine will be the same from week 1 to week 36, week 40, however long I need to prep for.
Yeah.
That's a mad length of prep, innit?
It's just one of them things that I really feels like engraved in me, is just, if I am going to do something, I'm going to do it the whole way. I don't see the point in doing something 75%, because that's just the way that I've been brought up. And I've always been brought up to work. I've always been brought up to not receive anything for nothing. I've never just been given anything, any opportunities that I've had. People will see them and say that's unbelievable, which is always appreciated, and the support that I do receive is majorly appreciated. But I would never say that I don't work for anything that's came up.
Yeah.
Do you feel, what's the right word? Do you feel like you're complete enough, like you're
Fulfilled?
Thank you, Jay. That's why the Welshman's here.
That's all the
reason. Do you feel fulfilled though, having this mindset, having these goals, having this forever wanting progression, having this thought of wanting to be a mass monster, wanting to get to Olympia? Do you currently feel fulfilled knowing that naturally you have limitations on yourself? Or is that me having a limited mindset?
A little bit. Because the one thing that's also driven me away, I say away, not fully away, but slightly away from the route of the Olympia, is pro shows, and Olympia is different level altogether.
Yeah.
But what was once considered really prestigious was the IFBB Pro card. That to me, I won my pro card natural bodybuilding from a federation that gives one pro card a year. That was how I looked at an IFBB Pro card.
Yeah.
You win your card, you are now in the mix of the best in the world. You win your card now, you're just an IFBB
Just
Pro.
another number.
Yeah.
And I feel that's really took away from my drive to become that and try and push to that next level. Don't get me wrong, I was still really, really, really wanting to do it, but it was hurtful in a way because of, like, even how many naturals now have been able to gain an IFBB.
There's been a couple of the last couple of years now.
Let's be fair though, you take a natural
Are they natural?
Well, I mean, to be fair, that's one thing I've heard. They don't actually test in these federations, so I don't know, but
I know one guy is definitely, I'm not
Yeah.
going to name him on you, but I know one guy is definitely, because I had conversations about potentially going down that route.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I know one guy is,
Yeah.
but yeah, the others is like,
Yeah, so it is a really hard one to answer because I know that being a realist, I know that I'm not going to look like Jay Cutler naturally, right? I know that. But the opportunities that did occur at the back end of the year and things that did start growing a lot more, like even from a business perspective as well,
Yeah.
things have ended up in a really good position to the point of I've got more things than just size to try and progress.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
So because of that, right now, for now anyway,
Yeah.
I'll still get up and I'll still eat 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day. Like, that's not going to be an issue. I'll still do everything I need to do to grow.
Yeah.
But that just might not be the main front seat driver right now.
Yeah, yeah. I don't see a problem with like prolonging things. You know,
No.
I always say to people, the more of a base you have, the more the jump's going to be.
Yeah.
Hopefully, some people, I guess, on the other side of that coin, are scared that, what if I go on and nothing happens?
Yeah.
What if I don't get stronger? What if I don't get bigger?
Yeah.
Because I think that's happened to a few people in the past,
Yeah.
but I'm sure that won't happen with yourself if you decide that.
with your mindset and like the way you're putting everything into this naturally now,
Yeah.
if you were 10 years down the line or whatever, or less than that, if you was to jump on,
Yeah.
I could just imagine how much you'd want to push it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, from a health perspective, it's like,
Yeah,
I-
I mean, I was going to say as well, like, that's why I said the previous question, because the way you described your goals and where you're at and what you want to achieve is just like, in my head, I was just thinking of an analogy like, this guy's got a car with 8 gears, but he's only using 5.
yeah,
Does that make sense? Like, you know that you've got these 3 gears here,
Yep.
right in front of your face if you choose it, but you're choosing to stay in 5th.
Yep.
And that takes a very strong mindset.
yeah.
But as you said,
Incredibly
you have
strong.
got sponsorships and a good business with the coaching. You've built a person, an identity
Yep.
from being natural. So I guess on the other side of that, it's like, okay, shit, I'm going to almost like forego my identity a little bit.
Yep.
Which I don't think you will, because you're still going to be as strong and stronger and big, but bigger.
Yep.
Compete at a higher level. And about the pro card thing, I completely get your angle with the not being as prestigious, because there's 2 ways to look at this. A lot of people say it's easier now because there's more than one, but there's so much more competitors.
Yep.
And yeah, a pro card means shit. It's what you do with it.
Yep.
And to get to Olympia, it's still freaking hard.
That was like
You know?
my point. That was the point of like, right, it's became, obviously, you can only really classify it as a little bit easier to gain a pro card now because of the amount that's given out over, say,
Yeah.
5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. But when it gets to pro level,
Yeah.
as in pro shows an Olympia level, that's totally out of.
Yeah.
That's different territory altogether.
Yeah. I would say that the pro card is definitely not as glamorous as it used to be. It might be more glamorous, but it's not as prestigious.
Yep.
But what you do with it now
it's
is harder than ever.
Yep.
So if you was to get that and make a name for yourself as a pro, you could not take that away from you.
It's definitely a really big thing, but it's a side of that I would always want to take it the full way.
Yeah.
I would never want to settle for nothing than that very top end, because I've got no in. Also the part of it that I do see it as is, if you are gonna do something like that to your body, in terms of put things like that into your body, I could only take it the whole way. I couldn't like just take it to a certain level and then just say, right, okay, that's me, I'm fine with this, because I know that from a mindset perspective I would always want to get better.
Yeah.
And I know on top of that, for me getting better, I would want to get bigger and bigger and bigger and push it to that point where I would be the one that would stand out because of that.
Yeah.
But it's just because of the mentality side of taking things all the way and not doing anything less.
Bodybuilding's a rabbit hole, isn't it? So that's just another hole for the rabbit to jump down. How deep does it go? You choose.
Should have just kept the wrestling up. Should never have competed.
Well, you're doing a fucking fantastic job at the minute. Why don't we talk about your escape from the Highlands? Like, what's brought you to... Because you was originally planning to move to Rotherham, I think.
Yep.
And you decided to pitch with Durham, which isn't too far away from where you were. What was the kind of feelings behind that?
So basically what happened was we moved to Carlisle first.
Yep.
And then we had
a Scottish border.
Quick one. Where were you living?
So I was living in Stranraer, which is in Dumfries and Galloway. So where you would go and get the ferry to Ireland.
Okay.
That's where I was staying.
Yeah.
So I was closer to Belfast than...
So it's on the left side of...
On the west.
On the west,
I think it's
Scotland,
on the west,
yeah.
To be honest, you're asking the wrong person. But
it's on the west.
In the
unless
fucking
you
sticks.
go to Ireland around.
I don't know. Right, so we moved there first and we had a apartment for 6 months, but worst decision ever.
Yeah.
Like, everything just went downhill. Literally everything went downhill.
Is this you and the missus?
Yep.
Yeah, right, okay.
Yep. Everything went downhill, not just from like... We were fine, but also not in a position anywhere close to where we are now.
Yeah.
Family, everything was just rock bottom. Training, rock bottom. Everything was just bad. I'm grateful now for it being the year that I took off of competing, because I don't even want to imagine what I would have been like or what my life would have been like if I was 20 weeks deep into a diet.
What was that? Was it far away from the gym or?
No, it was just everything was... I think because there was a lot going on with the family and that, and there was a lot of personal things going on, it dragged everything down.
Yeah.
And I was going to be moving for a job, and then I moved, and the job wasn't going to be up to what I thought it was going to be. So I had then no income for X amount of time, and I just signed on this apartment.
Yeah.
And it was like...
So you were just coaching small people that time, or?
I PT'd back in Stranraer.
Yeah.
So I PT'd only.
Yeah.
Never had an online number of clients or anything.
Okay.
It wasn't until I moved, and then I was like, right, I got offered another PT job, but then it just wasn't gonna work. Nothing came about that, so I was like, right, I'm now gonna have to advertise. I'm gonna have to try and build some clients online. So I started building a little bit, but at the same time as that, everything else was going downhill, like in terms of the personal side of things. And then we had things like FitX and that happening, which was cool. Then we had the Arnold's, which was around August, September time.
Yeah.
Heading down to Arnold's, written off by a big lorry.
Oh shit! Yeah.
And I
remember.
So it was just we moved, then it was just like that.
No way.
To the point where it was like, I think I got to probably one of like the most depressed parts of my life that I've ever been at, and I never want to go back to.
Yeah.
But I was always one to never believe of that sort of feeling. Do you know what I mean? Of
Keep talking. I'm just gonna help.
Yeah, that's
battery.
Of like depression and things like that. I was like, that's like a...
Yeah.
But I got to that point and then I was like, everything was just no good. So obviously we got to then January and the tenancy for the first apartment that we had was coming up.
Yeah.
So in my head I was like, I need to go to Rotherham. Rotherham's where I need to be.
Yeah.
The boys are there. The gym is fantastic. But by the time it got to January, we had no time to travel to Rotherham and back because it was going to take like 3 hours a time.
Yeah.
Just to get to Rotherham for say a viewing. So it ended up every week, a couple of times a week, we'd travel through to Durham to Ultraflex because it was maybe around an hour and a half.
Yeah.
We'd travel there, train, and I always got on well with Anth, and it was easy that way. So we had like maybe a week or so left on the apartment in Carlisle, and we thought, well, why don't we try Durham? Why don't we just move to Durham? Because it's going to be different, yes, but the facilities there, the gym's there, which is obviously what I need, and I need to be in a kind of better space with things. So we went to view a house at Durham, and a week later we had moved.
Yeah.
And that was so Rotherham kind of got a bit of a stall, and that's been
your battery.
Yeah, where's your spare battery?
Yeah.
What's it?
We're battery changing.
Oh, lovely. What's it for, the camera?
Just the one camera. We're going to keep this in. We don't edit it out, so just crap.
Oh, I love that. Love
So
that.
Durham was seemingly a bit more convenient, but
Yeah.
great atmosphere and environment. Like you say, he's got Amp who's he's running a tight ship there at Durham, isn't he?
Yep. So I mean, it's that's us been there 13 months now.
Yeah.
And it's been the quickest 13 months of my life.
Yeah.
Everything's been perfect. Business has shot. Bodybuilding's became even bigger for me.
Yeah.
And it's just training. I've started loving training again more than ever.
Yeah.
And like even now, like it's my that's my go-to for the day. That's my satisfaction. That's my need for the day. That turn up at Ultraflex, I love it. Don't get me wrong, it's not got a bodybuilding environment. Like it's a little bit more commercially than maybe your Rotherham, but it's perfect. And personal side of things, family side of things, myself and Sarah, everything's just
Wicked.
like
Happy days, man.
So
what is your view? This question. Me and Jay had a talk on another podcast about this. You see a lot, and it's purely for social media, I believe.
Yep.
But your view towards these people you see online that are lifting things perfectly.
Yep.
But you can see they're not really lifting any weight.
Yep.
In my opinion, the new school of thinking is that form's got to be kind of like at the top of the priority list. Like something's got to look clinically perfect. And that's going to have a sacrifice on the load aspect of it.
Yeah.
So when you view a set or an exercise, how much focus do you put on the form of it versus the load? There's got to be like a bit of a trade-off between the two.
I would look to put something like maybe a 70-30 split on execution and loading, and that's only because from the beginning I was always one to make sure that I need to be able to execute this regardless. I need to be able to know how to perform this safely, and then I can focus on driving load up and load up and load up. But that is what I feel is the problem with today's industry. Nobody's willing to learn how to really train hard.
Yeah.
Nobody's willing to learn how to just put time in and get after it. People are just getting brought up in all these brand new exercises that are really simple, easy, and realistically speaking, they're not taxing. They're not going to be super hard. But that is the problem because of the part of people being brainwashed to have to nail their execution 110%. It has to be perfect.
Yeah.
And then the second that you can't progress that perfect form, you've got to move exercise.
Yeah.
It's that to me is the biggest issue. So don't get me wrong, I still focus on my execution. Like my execution's is fine. A little bit of body momentum by the back end of my set to get them last and final couple of reps. I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
And this is also something that I say to my clients as well. We always focus on execution first, especially if you're maybe a newbie to the gym. We focus on execution, then we focus on training hard.
Yeah.
If you've been training for 10, 15, 20 years, okay, now you can take the smarter approach. You can do these exercises because realistically speaking, if you've been training 15, 20 years, are you trying to build more muscle? Probably not. If you've done the competing and you've done all that kind of stuff. But if you're just getting into the industry now and you've maybe been training for a couple of years, your goal should still be to progress at all costs from a development standpoint, in training, your physique, like everything.
Yeah.
But because of all of these brand new movements and because of all these brand new ways to execute things and tempos to execute things, it's ruining training.
Yeah.
It's I don't believe in it. I think it's bullshit. And
Any shots fired or any names you want to drop so I can check them in the algorithm?
The whole fucking industry.
Any names so I can...
Well,
Clickbait?
Let me just get my notes out. I've probably got a full fucking list.
I said to someone the other day, I says, can you imagine next time I have Eddie Hall in the gym, getting him to a single arm pull down?
It'd be funny for
it'd be a good one, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But,
that would be... The D handle would just snap in half.
Crazy. I agree. I think that the hard work aspect of it is lacking.
Yep.
The educational aspect is up there, higher than it's ever been. But if we can mix that education with the hard work, we're on to a winner.
Hopefully it'll come full circle and it'll all come together as one. Hopefully, anyway.
Yeah, definitely. What's cracking?
But like you said, it's like, the guys that are putting the educational content out to do these certain refining movements are usually the guys that have spent the time, built the tissue, and now they are at the point where they're having to refine things because they've done all the fucking hard shit to get the tissue in the first place.
The unfortunate part is people are buying into believing that that's what built the tissue.
That's the grey area shit, isn't it?
And don't get me wrong, I fully believe that all the educational stuff that's out now is fantastic because like you can learn anything, literally anything, but the aspect of showcasing hard work is finished. That's you're having to go back and watch people of 4, 5, 6 years ago to watch people actually just go balls to the wall. It's now a case of do a set and then tell the audience this is the tempo, this is the way you do it, this is the eccentric control, this is what we're doing next, this is the skeletal muscles that you're working. I mean, what the fuck's that about? Like, seriously.
Stand on one leg.
You see that a lot.
Of your balance through this angle of the tibia.
People go back and watch some of the old JP videos. You still see them going back now, like when they're eating their pre-workout meals, tagging it on their story, watching one from like 3 or 4 years ago or whatever, just to get that. So it comes to that point when there's so much content out there now, with so many guys creating content, videographers on the scene and that they've still got to go back 4 years to watch a hard training video.
Or just watch the old Jay Cutler DVDs or Ronnie Coleman DVDs. It's staple before most people's leg day.
100%.
I've just got, I think, what time are we on? I think
we're probably on the back end of this now, so we've got a couple of questions.
A few questions here.
I had a couple come through as well.
Let me have a quick.
While you
here we go.
You got them, yeah?
Yeah, so this is probably a good one actually, because most people nowadays have gone away from the typical off-season bodybuilder of back in the day. Like, I'm not saying quite as far as the Jay Cutler you see and the Lee Priest off-season you see at their biggest and worst. But a lot of people nowadays, they do this lean bulk. And if they perceive to be too fat, they start a mini cut. So this chap's asked, let me put him out there.
Jay Davis.
Remy Sarker. Remy Sarker, not Jay Davis. What body fat is acceptable to go up to while bulking and being natural?
That's probably one of the worst things you can think about, because if you have a percentage that you won't go past, you're then setting a limitation on your potential progression that could be made throughout an off season. If you get to 15% and be like, right, that's me, I'm 15% body fat, I need to mini cut. So you're going to mini cut for 8 weeks? You're going to get down to a position that you were 10, 12 weeks ago, or just after your prep. What happens when everything else starts going down? You aggressively cut, performance starts to take a bit of a hit. You need to look at things such as performance. You need to look at how you're feeling, look at your digestion, look at your recovery. Is everything okay? If everything's fine, keep pushing. If you start noticing signs of issues coming up then do something about it. But setting a goal like body fat percentage or body weight, is the last thing that any bodybuilder needs to do, really, unless you're a bodybuilder that works in a weight category that you specifically can't push too far above, then fair enough. But from a natural bodybuilder's perspective, we need to look at performance. That's our growth. In off season, we eat and we perform in the gym. That's our that's where we get our development from. So realistically speaking, we can never grow into shows or anything like that. So worry about dieting when you need to diet. If you get a little bit too fat in the off season, give yourself an extra 6 weeks to diet on prep. Don't just mini cut because you're not happy that you've lost that ab detail, or the progression that we can only make is in our off season. So don't prolong that by putting yourself in silly diet phases just to achieve a better look in the off season. That's not going to do anything. Like the judges on a panel in a bodybuilding stage don't care what your weight is, or what your body fat percentage is, or what you look like, or what you do. They just care about the look on the stage that day. So I mean, if you've had to give yourself an extra 6 weeks to diet, fine.
Go on, bro.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's another reason that social media is a bit of an issue sometimes, because people are looking at themselves and not wanting to put that fatter version of themselves out there.
For content and all that.
Yeah.
Off the back of that, what's kind of like, I know it's irrelevant, but what kind of is the amount of weight that you've dropped in a prep? Like the biggest amount of weight? What would you?
I've probably dropped about 45 pounds.
45 pounds, yeah.
About 40 to 45 pounds.
I seen something yesterday between JP and AJ on Instagram, and I think he said like 40 to 50 pound is like that top end. So
that would be peak off season. I would look at that. Definitely. I got to my heaviest last year, it was actually last year. I got to my heaviest. I was 241 pounds at my absolute, like I could not push it anymore, and then I ended up getting really ill and lost my appetite even more, so I just could not go any further than that. We only actually dropped off, I think, around maybe, I think it was like 32, 35 pounds last year, which like got me inside out. So obviously I knew I'd built more tissue, but the year before that, obviously I never had as much muscle as what I did last year, but we pulled off, I think, like 45 pounds or something. So
I think that's the benefit of doing it so slowly as well, right? You can make tiny adjustments over time and just peel it off ever so slowly and not lose 60, 70 pound that some people do in a prep.
I mean, I got to like a couple of weeks out last year, and I was still getting things like, obviously my diet is very high carbohydrate based, so my food was, because we had started off a little bit earlier and we never actually had to lose that much. I was able to keep my food super high, which done everything for me. But then again, it's also like that, are you willing to knuckle down for 35, 36 weeks on the same diet? Like, I don't get any variation. I get my diet plan sent through, I follow that, and that's it. I've got no...
I think it's the best way. There's less complications that way. You know when your digestion is everything else. Mindset I find easier to kind of just keep going. But I think, is that when it comes, are you doing it for the wrong reasons if you want that enjoyment aspect from your diet? A lot of people are. But as a bodybuilder, you're rarely going to get that. So just deal with the fucking thing.
You just got to put up with it. That's why nowadays you're seeing a lot of people do bodybuilding for the wrong reasons. Not because they want to do it, because they want to see people's reactions of them doing it. And they want to receive that kind of gratification from Instagram and people on Instagram that don't actually give a fuck about you. But if they like your post and comment, oh, like, you're looking great,
they're supporting you, bro.
That means like it's bullshit.
Just one more thing before your question, Jay, off the back of that. So in regards to increasing your calories through the off season, do you look for a plateau in strength, a plateau in body weight, do you need your appetite to be in a certain position, or is it a combination of all three?
It's more so a combination of all three. If I'm continuously performing really well in the gym and I'm still sleeping like a baby and I'm not super hungry, then I'll keep things where they're at. I'll be first to include maybe some extra intra for the first more so target of putting food up. Then I'll put food around my training. I'll see how my training reacts to that extra food around it, and then I'll kind of more so start pushing food into meals 1, 2 around that. But it's I would say it's a combination.
The biggest thing here on this podcast we're going to come to the finding is what I've said to people all along. When you get the questions, what should I do if I'm assisted? What should I do if I'm natural? they're both fucking same.
Yeah, they literally
Everything's
are the same.
Exactly the same.
Yep.
There's no difference between the two. No difference in training style. No difference in diet. It's literally you're dealing with an individual.
Yep.
We have the same principles, but they're individualised.
Yep.
So just to put that out there, just in case people didn't know.
Even the heads look the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Just different cuts.
Different cuts.
You're similar. I got a bit of
bit of length.
Oh wow.
We had a couple of questions come through. Well, this one probably take too long because I know you're a big fan. But what's your favourite single D-arm handle variation? I'll probably be here all day for that one, won't you?
Yeah, we'll just not answer that one.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the next.
We've talked about, do you ever get tempted with your potential on gear? So we'll scrap that because we've kind of gone into that anyway. But what is your favourite thing about natural bodybuilding and why? And that is from Tom Crowther.
My favourite thing about natural bodybuilding, I would say, is my niche, because I like to showcase what can be done as a natural bodybuilder. And I feel as if I'm in that bracket that nobody else is in, because every other natural bodybuilder we see more so does the same things. It's just starting to get into that point now where I really feel as if I'm getting my point across of, if you do set a limitation on what you can and can't do without drugs, then immediately you're going downhill. But if you actually put a little bit more self-belief in yourself and what you can actually do, if you nail every other variable outside of the gym, your performance can be very impressive. And you can do things that even would be super impressive for an enhanced athlete. That's what I love about natural bodybuilding, because I don't want people to look at me and think that it's just a physique. Mm-hmm. I want people to be able to look at me and think of my mindset first, and then look at my training. That's the effort side and the work ethic side that I want people to see, because I feel as if I'm in the position now where followers are jumping up and up and up, subscribers are jumping up and up and up, but I'm really hoping that they are going back and seeing where I was 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
I hope that they're not just looking at where I'm at now and thinking genetics or just, I would love to get like that, but that's not going to happen, or drugs.
Yeah.
That's my favourite part. It's the endless pursuit of getting better, but it's being in the position to be willing to do anything to keep the mind as strong as possible. And this goes back to even staying clear of negativity, because if you stay positive and you even come up against any sort of negativity but take something positive from it, you are going to move forward. It's as simple as that. You might have to go through another grey area, but you go through that, you remain strong, you remain positive. If you complain about something and dwell on the fact that it's happening and allow that to dictate your days, your sessions, your meals, your sleep, then of course you're going to start going back the way. Of course you're not going to progress forwards until maybe you get out of that area and you get a bit of motivation built up and you start again. Mm-hmm. It's all about doing what you need to do when the feeling, the motivation's gone, or the feeling that what you started with. Once that's gone, that's going to be the determining factor of whether you want to actually pursue the career or not.
Yeah. You just need to go to my barber and speak to his mate. He'll tell you not to bother. He'll say, just give it up. What's the point?
There's no point in it.
What's the point?
Progress is overrated, bro.
Oh, God. You need some cereals.
Did you have any more questions, or was
that was it? The other two we've already covered.
Yeah, sound.
I had my massage guy joking about gear. And then the other one
was
based around whether you enjoy training every day, and I guess, well, you fucking wouldn't do it if you didn't enjoy it.
That's so true.
I've taken a leaf out of your book the last 6 weeks, like training every day and just tagging things in on my rest days and that. And I've been able to do it. It's just managing what you're training on, like my supposed rest days. I've chucked like wild card days in where I'm training different muscle groups, but then it's managing that, not crossing over into the next session to fuck you up. Like I was tagging arms in, and then I was like, I'm only going in and pumping arms anyway, just a pump session, and then I'd go in on the next day and I would just bomb, like my presses would just bomb. So I've had to kind of rejig it a little bit. But yeah, because I feel like I can recover well. I must do, because we talked about like the traveling and training and traveling. That's kind of a staple thing in my days anyway. So I think my recovery level is of that what you can kind of recover at. And I'm natty as well, so it speaks.
That's true.
About the same. So
That's what happens when you're natty. It's just the natty recovery capabilities. So, Jamie, maybe if you were natural.
Well, I am natural at the minute, to be fair. If you class TRT as natural and not TRT plus either, proper TRT.
Proper Dr. TRT.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Love that.
Is there any more, while we're on the topic, is there any more progression with what's going on with you at the minute? Or
I obviously, seemingly through Instagram, people have seen me doing a lot more physical activity, a lot of cardio, a lot of mobility stuff. And that's really because I was in Canada, and I'm going to speak to a lot of Khifie's points here with being all in. I was in Canada with Mutant, and I've got bad patella tendonitis. I trained legs and did hack squats, and it just wrote me off. I was like walking down the stairs, like, oh God, aches and pains as you get older. But I've always like not been very good with mobility. Always said I'll stretch, and I never done it. You know, just lazy stretcher. Never factored it into my routines, and I think I'm paying for it a bit now. But in January, I was ill for the whole of January, couldn't put any weight on. The initial plan this year was to do January to March or April as a weight gaining phase to lead into competitions this year. But I know to start prep, obviously we don't focus on weights, but we all have numbers that we know we need to be around about after doing it year on year. So I know I need to be about 330 before I start dieting. I was sat in February at 310. I'm like, shit, okay, I've got Dubai. I go tomorrow with the missus for a week. I get back for a week. I'm in Arnold's, Ohio. I'm back in March, but then I go to FIBO in April with Mutant again. I've got holiday in May. So I'm thinking all these things, I'm falling to bits. And if gladiators do come back to me and say, right, we want you for a physical audition, you got to do A, B, and C. And it's going to be bodyweight shit and physical shit, like running, mobility related stuff. I was thinking on the plane back, I'm in no fit state. I'll just bomb it. So with that mindset towards bombing the gladiators, if it ever came about, because if it was between doing something like the gladiators and competing again, I'd choose the gladiators all day, every day, because I feel like I've got to the point in the competitive side of things where I feel as though I've done as much as I'm willing to do to progress. And with the amount of food that I have to eat in an off season, it's, you know, between 8 and 10,000 calories a day, depending on other factors. I just haven't got that mentality towards eating that much food day to day, being overweight day to day, being immobile, restricting other parts of life that I now value, like just going out for walks with the missus. My training was at the point where I was getting panic attacks when I was doing my heavy sets. So the cardiovascular side of things was failing more so. So that's it. Because I can't be all in right now, I'm just focusing on other things that I think should be the priority. So mobility and fitness is taking a front seat. And if I compete this year, who fucking knows? I might do. But at the minute, I won't, unless... This is another thing that is in the back of my mind, and it's not like really a thing, but it could happen. I'm 295 as of this morning, so I've lost 15 pounds so far from that 310, and my classic weight is 270. So let's see where I end up.
Shouldn't have said anything.
Let's see where I end up.
Oh, the classic.
No, that's just someone said that in the gym that says, "Well, you know where this is leading, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, 270."
Oh man,
no, I don't know what I look like at 270.
Yeah,
but I'm literally. Honest to God, you know, hands to God, 200 milligrams of testosterone a week. That's my TRT dosage. That's prescribed to me, and that's all I'm taking. So if I was 270, I would not be going away from the TRT to compete. That you've got your goals. One goal in the kind of back of my head was, how would I look competing on TRT when I know these guys are like blasting so many different things? That's just like a thought in the back of my head. It's nothing that's actually a goal that I have ambition to achieve. It's just if it happens, it happens. Yeah.
Sick, man.
So with regards to gladiators, hearing back from them, no, but I'm prepping myself just in case.
Yeah.
I'm loading the guns.
So basically, when we train shoulders later, he hasn't been able to do anything. So you're gonna. It'll be fun to see.
My shoulder session this week was military press and Olympic lifts for the full body mobility.
Wow.
Brilliant.
Lateral raises. and then cardio.
God, if only I knew I was turning up for a CrossFit session. I probably wouldn't have came.
For anyone watching as well, I'm sure you're already subscribed to Khif's YouTube. He's filming with Alex. Shout out to Alex behind the scenes of this, and then on to the session where these boys will. I'll be there, but I'll be off camera. But these boys will be training delts on this. So, before we wrap this up, is there anyone you would like to shout out? Sponsors and
So HR Labs, Unrivaled. HR Labs, we've got Khifie 15, that supports me a lot. Gasp, Better Bodies, as always. Khifie 15 as well, that supports me a lot. So anybody that uses my codes is always very much appreciated. And all the support, and to you guys, thank you very much for having me on. This is a nice little sweet studio. You know, I'm usually behind a laptop, getting asked what my split is.
It's a work in progress.
Sitting on a sofa, you know. So
we get in there. There's like small changes every podcast at the moment. So I've got a comfier chair because normally I'm sat behind a fucking desk like a teacher. So now I'm down here with the giant.
Jay's sorted now. Happy days.
But yeah, thank you for coming on. And for everyone that's tuned in via Spotify, YouTube, subscribe, follow, 5-star ratings, all that jazz. And we'll see you when you get back. That's perfect timing.
Yes.
From Dubai.
13, Jay.
Oh, fuck.
We're on it.
And after Dubai,
Arnold's.
before the Arnold. We'll try and squeeze one in for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Peace.